keeping you up to speed on all your Colorado teams. It's time for Coffee Break.
A happy Tuesday to you all. Welcome in to another episode of Coffee Break. We've got Taco Tuesday, we've got Hot Take Tuesday, and here in Broncos country, we've got a Victory Tuesday after an electric Monday night showdown with the Cleveland Browns. And I am pleased to be joined today by someone who was in the stadium, on the field, and in the locker room. That is NFL insider James Palmer. James, how you doing today?
I'm doing good with the rest of Broncos country. I mean, a wild one. It was a blast, Richie. It was anything that Jameis Winston partakes in is enjoyable. I mean, even though he's on the other team, I think even Broncos fans would say like he's just fun. I think he's good for the NFL and he's good for a couple of picks. I will say this: I said to everybody who was sitting near me on press row, while we're in that front row of the press box, everybody's kind of saying, "All right, what happens on this drive?" And I was like, Jameis pick, like 100%. I didn't call pick six, but I knew a pick was coming.
Yeah, he's got a little multivitamin in him, you know, 1 a day, 2 a day, however many you need to take per doctor recommendations. But he is electric, man. I'll tell you that. From he might be the best at saying a lot to say nothing. Like somebody will be like, "Hey, Jameis, what do you think about going up against the stout Steelers front seven this weekend?" And he's like, "The horses are ready for battle, but victory comes from the Lord." Like, that's not what I asked, but thank you.
Everything is great, man. Everything is so much fun. Like, what is it? Like, you can't shoot for the sky. The sky's not the limit if you live on the moon.
Yeah, how can the sky be the limit when we have people on the moon?
And then the other, I mean, just last night when he was. Just,
how about the graphic where he's like the quarterback comparison graphic with him and Bo, and he's like dancing and Bo's just doing the standard, like, you know, look ahead and whatever. He's just.
I will say this. I mean, I don't think we're gonna sit here and talk about the Browns much. I do think he might be the perfect player for what they've been through this season and what they've been through at the quarterback position with Deshaun Watson. Like, he's so likable. He brings, and I've been told this by people in Cleveland, like not just the locker room together, like people in the building, cafeteria workers, like no lie, like janitorial staff. Like
there was a clip
love
on,
him, and he knows who all of them are, and he interacts with all of them, and he might be perfect for what. For what that organization needs. I mean, he's a great person and a great dude, and he has no memory at all, so it's super fun to watch. There was a crazy stat, I will say this. There's 2 players in the history of the NFL that have had 3 games with over 450 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. Do you know who the 2 players are?
Jameis Winston and Peyton Manning.
Yes. I mean, look at that, baby. Let's go.
Yeah,
and
I'm trivia
Jameis
ready.
Lost the last one.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of situations like that, talking about the Broncos game last night, where you had a situation where Jameis was put in a category with Peyton Manning in the stat you just referenced. He was second only to Tom Brady in passing yardage in Monday Night Football history. You had Nick Bonito on a list with Khalil Mack and Chris Jones in terms of players who had 11 plus sacks and a pick 6 through the first 13 weeks of a season. So you had moments in that game last night that was just trading blow after blow after blow, where you had players on both sides being put in pretty rare company.
Yeah, it was wild. I mean, and we'll get to him, but the one that jumps out at me is, I mean, Jerry Jeudy's 235 is the most ever against a former team. I mean, T.O. I think was 213 against the Niners, and this is the most in a revenge game. He had more receiving yards in this game than Deshaun Watson did in any game passing this season, which is remarkable. All sorts of stuff up and down the field, and I think we'll get into the game itself, but like the explosive plays, the ability to counterpunch one another. The Broncos have the 93-yarder to Mims, and then Jerry Jeudy told us after the game they essentially drew up his 70-yarder essentially in the dirt to counter it. And so it was just an unbelievably entertaining game for sure, that maybe the Broncos needed on the national stage for people to kind of believe, even though this wasn't the defense that we're used to seeing from Denver, but maybe it was kind of like the excitement, the Bo Nix, the big plays, like Denver's legit. even though this game didn't, go exactly as they wanted to, they still won and they entertained America.
Yeah, I mean, it was that throw that you referenced, the touchdown play to Marvin Mims. I don't think it's hyperbolic. I said it in the moment, and I'll stand by it today. To my eyes, I think that's the best throw a Broncos quarterback has made, singular throw that a Broncos quarterback has made since Peyton Manning walked out the door. And it may have been better than some of the throws in Peyton Manning's 2015 season when he was a shell of himself. That was,
yeah, I was about to say,
yeah, that was an ill-advised in a lot of ways. I relate moments like that to another local reference here as like a Michael Porter Jr. moment. And Michael Porter Jr. for the Nuggets sometimes will catch and shoot a 3-pointer that you're like, why in the world would you even? And then it goes in. So you're like, no. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That throw from Bo, I was like, whoa, hey, and
totally.
it just.
Bo had a bit of a, I'm curious what Sean would think or Davis Webb would think. But like, it kind of seemed like he went back to some old habits in this game. A lot of fading away. I'm assuming Myles Garrett can do that to you. But a lot of throwing off the back foot again. It looked like he got a little bit into this, like, I'm going to play like Jameis too, and I'm going to let it rip. Sean took the fall for the bad play call and the deep pick on first down. That was just like everybody's just scratching their head going like, what are you doing to start this drive? On the deep ball, like, I do think he got a little bit into that, and I think that's because of maybe the nature of the game. Some of the footwork and the fading away stuff had returned. Maybe that's Myles Garrett. But I did see, like, the confidence is through the roof.
Yeah.
Like,
there's no doubt.
Through the roof. I'm going to put this ball anywhere.
Yeah.
And maybe that's playing Jameis, and maybe that's the way he's playing right now. But a couple of those throws, I think he's like, well, this isn't how we play.
Yeah. The one that he threw up to Troy Franklin, the 50-50 ball that Ward picked off. I mean, that was clearly just off his back foot, didn't have enough underneath it, but he went for it. And I think to your point, I think his level of confidence is through the roof. And I think his comfortability with Sean Payton's system is growing week by week to the point where he's no longer interested in prioritizing the check down and doing you've heard Joel Klatt and a lot of other quarterbacks. You'll never go broke taking a profit. Take what the defense gives you. Tom Brady did that masterfully, I think, in
a lot of
Tampa Bay and a lot of seasons where it's just check it down the middle of the field, just 6 yards, 7 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards. And saw a little bit of that from Bo when he was still kind of happy feety and getting comfortable. Now I think he's interested in home run balls.
I think he is. Richie, the throw that stands out to me the most in terms of, like, maybe we're a little overconfident here, it's not the deep ball that Denzel Ward picked off. It's the one, I think, in the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken, he's rolling to his right, and he gets almost all the way to the sideline and tries to throw it a la Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Unbelievably few number of people can make this throw all the way back across the field to where Cortland Sutton's not even paying attention anymore because he's like, There's over here. The ball's never coming over here. You know what I mean? And it kind of like sails by him and the defender. And I was like, that's not in Bo Nix's repertoire. Like, that's in like 3 guys in the league repertoire.
I think
that was the one where I was like, let's.
Yeah, that I know which play you're referencing there. And that one combined with the one of the Denzel Ward interceptions, the deep one to Troy Franklin, especially. I think and in a positive note, the Marvin Mims touchdown, what I kept thinking to myself in that game was Bo Nix just has a pretty high degree of you hear quarterbacks call it arm arrogance. Like, I can put this ball where it needs to go. And I think that it's kind of a catch-22 in a sense of, like, I think you want your quarterback to have that kind of confidence and borderline cockiness that I can make a play when needed. Because, again, that's how you get a guy who is 3rd and 11 on his own 7-yard line and dials up a 40-yard ball on a rope into essentially triple coverage in the secondary. But I do think that that's where it can get him in a little bit of trouble. And I think against teams that are a little bit better than the Browns, I think that that's a situation that could cost you. In fact, I mean, it literally almost cost them against the Browns. That game came right down to the wire, if not for a couple of timely interceptions from Jaquan McMillan and Cody Barton.
Yeah, what jumps out at me, honestly, Richie, is this. Like, he doesn't have the arm talent to have that arrogance.
Yeah.
Like, I think he has maybe better arm talent than some evaluators thought.
Yeah, he was a check down merchant.
I think arm strength can increase in your NFL career. We've seen it with some guys. But I don't think you're ever putting him in that category like the Josh Allen of the world, or
a true
Anthony
gunslinger.
Richardson. You know what I mean? That it's just like it's just so few people are gifted with it on the planet. And I don't know if you really want that arm arrogance in that sense, which I like the term. But to me, I liken it a little bit to, and this guy probably has a better arm than Bo too, is Jordan Love. Like, Jordan Love has that. If you talk to people in Green Bay, he's got a little bit of, well, watch me go make this play. Like, I know it may not be there, but I'm going to go make the play.
Yeah.
And the reason I make the comparison too is like what they're doing with Jordan Love, I would assume is what Sean's doing with Bo, and he'll continue to do with him over the next 2 years. And that's like, there's going to be some rocky roads, and we've seen that from Jordan Love over the last 2 seasons, but nobody's doubting he's like one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL and has one of the better arms and has the ceiling to be, you know, really, really a top 5 quarterback in this league. They put more on him at the line of scrimmage this year than they have in years past. Matt LaFleur wants him to run the entire offense from the line of scrimmage if he can. He wants him to call the 2-minute entirely himself, things that Aaron Rodgers used to do in the past. Now, getting to that moment, is that going to be like linear and there'll be no like bumps in the road? We're seeing those. I mean, he's had stretches with picks, and I think he has like, 10 or 11 on the year or something. But I think we're going to see that with Bo over the next 2 years, right? Or the next 3 years, where Sean's going to keep giving him more. Like, this playbook is endless. What he did with Drew Brees is endless. So as they continue to grow this and put more on Bo, and I know for a fact they have been doing that, he's been doing more at the line of scrimmage. As he goes through this, the confidence will go up when he does it. Also, there'll be some mistakes. There'll be some, I checked to the wrong play, right?
Yeah.
I made some things. So I don't think those are necessarily bad things. I mean, like, the Packers are still very much in it, and, you know, at 9-3 are still playing really good football, even though he's learning these things as he goes through it. I think that's kind of the same model that they're going to have in Denver for Bo Nix. Like, we're going to win games while we're letting this quarterback grow and put more on his plate.
Yeah, I think that if there's one thing that Broncos country can feel good about in an ugly win, other than the fact that they did win, is that this was, I think, another reminder that even though it's not always going to be perfect and clean and easy, the Broncos, by all accounts, are ahead of where everybody thought that they would be. And frankly, realistically, they maybe should be in certain situations, considering they took on the biggest dead cap in NFL history. They've got a rookie quarterback. They've got minimal playmakers at the tight end and running back position, and wide receiver outside of Cortland Sutton is pretty spotty. Things are going ahead of schedule. And so when you can be in a position to win games while you're rebuilding, I don't think you can ask much more from that from a team perspective.
Yeah, and I'll take kind of the comp like one step further, honestly. Like, who's Jordan Love throwing the football to? Like, a bunch of young players that grew with him, right? That's a young receiving core that doesn't really have a number one. But like, all of these are young skill guys that they found. And they're not first round picks. Like, you know what I mean? And they grew them around. Is that Devon Vele? Is that Troy Franklin takes a big step? Like, Vele, I would say, is probably a better NFL player than Troy Franklin right now. But does Troy get, you know, everybody matures differently. We'll probably get into Nick Bonito. Like, that's a perfect example of everybody grows differently at the NFL level to who they can become. Maybe that's kind of another comp in this, where you're going to have your skill guys. Hopefully you pick the right ones like Green Bay did, and they grow with your quarterback. Yeah,
and you mentioned Nick Bonito, and that you just jogged my memory of. There was a handful of moments during that game where I kind of paused and thought to myself, or kind of caught myself feeling certain things that I hadn't felt in a long. It's been a long time since we've seen a Broncos team be able to get into a genuine shootout with another team in prime time, the world's watching, or, you know, give up a big play touchdown and the offense comes back out on the field, and you thinking as a fan, you're sitting at home or you're sitting in the stands thinking, hey, we got this. We're going to be fine. And as many times as Cleveland scored, I personally never felt, and I'm sure that sentiment was shared, that I had confidence that the Broncos offense was going to be able to move the ball, and it wasn't going to be a situation. I mean, listen, we're only a couple of years removed from the Broncos having in my opinion, the ugliest stretch of primetime football in a single season ever with those when the Broncos were in primetime like 5 times in Russell Wilson's first year. And everyone seemed to out ugly the previous one to the degree where you had that I think it was a Thursday night game or a Monday night game against the Colts where it's tied and home Broncos fans are leaving the stadium before the start of overtime.
Yeah.
It's like, I've never seen that. So I'm definitely not, it's not lost on me where they've come from. And I think that another one of those moments being Nick Bonito after the game that he had and the comparisons that were being made to him in terms of all-time great players in their primes with Khalil Mack and Chris Jones and you name it, Von Miller. And he's sitting at the desk on the post game with Scott Van Pelt getting interviewed. And it's like, this is a Broncos player after a stellar game getting interviewed on Monday Night Football. And it's not even the quarterback, the easy layup pick to kind of have a guy join the desk. So ugly but good, like it says on the bottom of the screen there. I think that it is totally okay, and you mentioned it earlier, to sometimes you got to win a greasy one. You just got to get by. And I think the Kansas City Chiefs have been living that for a season now, and this was an example of the Broncos proving to themselves that they can do it too.
Yeah, if you're a playoff team, you need to win games in a variety of ways. Like, you got to, because games are not always going to fall the way you want them to fall, which is you have a top 5 defense, top 3 defense, and you're going to be able to protect the football and not take sacks and know you'll get the ball back because you have, one of the better defenses in football, and the game's going to go accordingly. Like, playoff teams can win in a variety of ways, whether it's through the kicking game, whether it's through special teams, which I think has been outstanding for Denver, whether it's in times you win a shootout and you got to make big plays and big moments. I think this is the first time we've seen it this season, right? Or, where Denver won a shootout. Like, they had to go out and just out gunsling the ultimate gunslinger of gunslingers in Jameis Winston, and you did it. And so, even though, the defense is going to be upset with the way things went and the way Jerry Jeudy, the former Bronco, torches them and they just didn't look like themselves at all, I think a few things are at play at that. I think one is the quarterback they're going against, Richie, in all honesty. Because I was talking to some guys in the locker room about this, and it was like, he's going to take chances that other quarterbacks don't take.
Yeah.
He's going to throw the ball and break rules that usually are followed by quarterbacks. And sometimes it's harder to play against because you're like, you're not expecting it. Yeah. Like, this every other quarterback in the league's not going to throw this. And he does. And so that you were able to hang around like that and go shot for shot with them because that was their style and win again, I think makes you even more so having a stance for your strong case as a playoff team.
Yeah, and you brought up the defense and being a little bit upset with their performance, and I agree with that but I also think on a positive note, the Broncos defense has undoubtedly bailed out and carried the offensive side of the football for several, if not the majority of the games this season. And this felt like
it's okay to have a clunker, right?
Yeah, and this felt like a game where the defense being down Riley Moss, and going up against an erratic, kind of unpredictable quarterback and a receiver going with heavily motivated to get revenge against his former team, and a team that can run the ball. This felt like an opportunity where the offense needed to get a little give back and be like, hey, yes, Jerry Jeudy's going off against you, but we got you. And they did. The defense ended up putting 2 scores on the board, so it's not like they didn't contribute at all. For sure. But I mean, there haven't been many defensive backs in my memory that have gotten picked on the way that the Broncos secondary was getting picked on since Ryan Gosling was playing for a state championship with the Titans.
Whoa, bro. Don't pick on Ryan like that. He benched himself, too. He just said, I don't want to play anymore.
He did.
I'm not sure if that's why Levi Wallace did, but he could have. Because it was
Chris
not
Abrams'
going
drain
well.
came in at the end.
And it was tough. I mean, they were doing their best to free Jerry. I mean, that was what the game plan was. Knowing Stefanski and knowing what they wanted to do, the goal was to move him around, change him in the formation, try to avoid Pat the best they could, because he had 2 catches for 20 yards on Surtain. That's it. And I think Surtain was on him over half the time, right? 59% of the snaps. Pat was lying against him. And I talked to Pat in the locker room, and he was like, man, I wanted to line against him every play, but like
Of course.
they wouldn't let that happen. Because of the way they put him in motion, because of the way they put him inside. And
There's only so much you can do
around. There's only so many spots you can put Surtain. And I think the other part that we need to remember, and why maybe some of these breakdowns happened, one was J-Max actually said it was so loud we were missing some of the calls. Yeah. And we missed some of them in the secondary because of how loud it was, and that was a couple of the breakdowns. The other part is when you have somebody who travels a lot like Pat does, what does the rest of the secondary need to be able to do? They need to move too. They need to play multiple spots. Well, when you have the other guy in Riley Moss not out there, and there's a new piece out there, that ever-changing motion that your secondary goes through when you have a corner that travels, and not everybody has to do that. That's why a lot of corners don't travel, because it changes what you do as a secondary. I would assume it made the communication even harder, and the ability to have a breakdown even greater.
Yeah, and I think, listen, I there's always conflicting opinions when it comes to a bye week, because if you're playing good football and you take a bye week, it's like, well, maybe they could just keep it rolling. This might actually kind of interrupt the rhythm and interrupt the flow. And I think the Broncos, who, are sitting at 8-5 after starting 0-2, certainly fall into that category. But I think I think last night was an indicator of, in some ways, that Riley Moss's absence was definitely felt, and it mitigated what you could do with Patrick Surtain and put, Levi Wallace and Chris Abrams-Drain and others in bad positions. So I think if you were able to get out of this kind of ugly, grimy shootout kind of game, you get the bye week. Hopefully Riley Moss can come closer and closer to coming back, and then you hit the ground running again for the back stretch with a fully healthy secondary. So I think that could be good timing for Denver in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, also I'm going to do this. Oh, Hank didn't go crazy good. My dog's laying right here. I was nervous when I did that.
Yeah, just somebody's at the door.
They've been remarkably healthy.
Yeah.
O-line, again, has been remarkably healthy. You lost McGlinchey for a little mini stretch there, but as a whole, they've been, relatively okay, which is always a group that everybody worries about, and they weren't going to match last year. That was just insane to be able to have that stretch of health. But, on the defensive side of the ball, pretty decent. You know what I mean? They've been okay in the injury spot. I mean, I was on my show this morning talking about the Niners. It's like a Pro Bowl team worth of guys that are missing. It's unbelievable on both sides of the ball. There's teams that have gone through this. They haven't. But I think we saw that's one of the things that happens when you are, like you mentioned earlier, Richie. I think it was a good point. What you're doing with the lack of funding. You got $53 million in dead money. That hurts what? That hurts your depth. It hurts what you can put out there if you lose somebody. And so it's a dangerous game that they had to play this year because of the decision they made at quarterback. But it's something that I don't think will be as big. Now he's upset.
There we go.
Because I think there's somebody really at the door. But I'll let him out too. But that, that's the biggest part is that this is a 2-year deal that you have to deal with, hopefully, and you can get that depth back. I'm listening to you, Richie. Trust me. Listen, I'm just going to free this beast.
That's okay.
Wild animal.
We're a dog-friendly show here on
animal.
Coffee Break. Somebody's got to protect the Palmer household. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
No way.
I came prepared. The last time you and I did an Overreaction Tuesday, I think that the assumption was that I didn't bring enough heat, and I wasn't overreacting on any of them. So I came better prepared this time with things that I actually believe. I'm not just saying it just to say it, but briefly, I want to switch gears. It's not clickbait. Briefly before that, I want to switch gears to something that came out earlier today here locally. It was announced that once again, Mike Shanahan is not going to make the final cut for the Pro Football Hall of Fame in this year's induction class. And James, I've never talked to you about this specifically, at least not to my memory, but we've had all of these conversations over the years. Why is it that Mike Shanahan continues to just be just at the edge of the tunnel where he can't reach? I mean, whose Cheerios did he, ruin?
Do people ruin people's Cheerios?
I guess. I don't know. Who did he anger? To get to
whose
this
dog
point?
did he kick, I guess you could say. Speaking of the canine references going. I don't know. And there's enough people in the league that don't know. I mean, I do think there's a little bit of this. Like, there's a little bit of, I don't think what he's done for the NFL is acknowledged universally, but the group that acknowledges it gives it so much credit. Does that make sense? Like,
It does.
the part that really understands and believes this, like, about Mike Shanahan and his impact on the NFL, are like 100% in.
Yeah.
The problem is some of these other guys, it's like everybody's like 75 in. You know what I mean? Like, and it doesn't make any sense. But the people that really get it, go talk to Gary Kubiak. I have. Like, go talk to people to where this is still like, I mean, they're all offshoots of it, right, in a variety of ways, but it's still like the most popular style of offense in the NFL right now.
Yeah. You've got a coaching tree that is a California redwood by NFL standards, as strong as it could possibly be, that comes from the Shanahan lineage. You've got it feels like half, if not more than half, of the teams in the NFL still run a variation of the West Coast offense. And he yet now this year is going to have to potentially watch. He's going to have to watch Mike Holmgren, who he beat in a Super Bowl, get in front of him. And it just
has one Super Bowl, I think, to Mike's two, right?
So, yeah. And it just, I don't know.
It's tough. I do think another part of it is some people give, I don't know the right way to say this, that sometimes the credit gets split past Mike, right? Like I mentioned Gary, and there's a factor that believes what Gary has done was like its own thing off of Mike, and then that created like a whole like style of zone running that became borderline unblockable if it was done correctly. And then it's like, all right, does like Gary steal, and he would never want this, right? But like, does Gary steal a little bit of Mike's like shine in that sense? And then like there's the McVay and Kyle's version that kind of like takes him to, oh, all right, does Mike get credit for that? Like, so I don't know. Like, this is one to where like I scratch my head repeatedly going like, am I just not getting it because I live in Denver?
Yeah. I don't know what the disconnect is.
Or am I just not getting it because it doesn't make sense?
Right.
I don't know. Like, it's really kind of difficult to understand. I mean, it's similar. I mean, it's not similar, but like Robert Kraft cannot get into the Hall of Fame.
6 Super Bowls.
He cannot get into the Hall of Fame. Like, he's trying to do the same thing his buddy Bon Jovi did, which was essentially Bon Jovi tried to and successfully bought his way into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like, he's tried and finally like paid his way in. And like Robert trying to do everything, and I'm like, he's done a lot. Like, he's done more than just the 6 Super Bowls. Like, and he can't get in. So I don't know, man. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't understand it. I'm not sure. I've had the local bias questions in my own head of like, am I just too close to this? You know, am I too emotionally invested? But deep down, I don't feel like I am. And there's a strong contingency of people who fall in line with that echo chamber and who are very confident that someday Mike will get into the Hall of Fame. And I still want to believe that too. But man, every year that goes by, it's like, well, what's going to be different next year that we didn't get this year? Whose argument's going to be a little bit better?
Because if he doesn't get a job this year, Belichick's eligible next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
that's
tough. So, yeah.
I don't know, man. Well, we'll see. It's disappointing, but it's a familiar.
Hit me with these bad boys.
Overreaction Tuesday. Okay. So my first one, I'm gonna keep it. We spent the majority of the show today talking about the Broncos-Browns game, and I had the thought immediately after the game, and I didn't say it to anybody else. I'm unveiling it here.
Oh, wow. Big deal.
I think the Broncos have one loss remaining on their schedule. I think they are going to finish with 11 wins, which is significantly higher than a lot of their projections.
Than the 5 that everybody assumed?
Yep.
Can I guess what the loss is?
Sure.
You need to say the loss is at the Chargers.
It is. And I actually thought it was going to be the opposite. Before they flipped to the primetime flex schedule, I had actually said, I think you're going to get tripped up, assuming they didn't shut everything down, that you were going to get tripped up by the Bengals, who are just like the most dangerous, bad team offensively that I've ever seen.
Joe's like a MVP candidate if this team isn't for like it's what he's doing. Honestly, is almost like an anomaly.
Yep.
To play this good and not win games is borderline insane.
Yep.
What's happening with him, but I'm like, I'm going to be cautious on. I think this is an overreaction. I think they will lose more than one. Now, what would play in your favor is if the Chiefs have the number 1 spot locked up.
And that factored into my assumption as well.
Anybody in the season finale, and then that's like a little bit of an easier game to win.
Yep.
But I'm going to go into this Colts game after the bye very similarly to the way I viewed the Browns game. I honestly thought they were going to lose the Browns game.
Yep.
Because that is a talented, dangerous team that, like, you can get this Jameis or this Jameis. And for 80% of the game, they got this Jameis.
Mm-hmm.
They were lucky the other 20% of the game, they got the other Jameis that we see. And they got 2 pick sixes.
In the most pivotal moments,
In the most pivotal moments, you got 2 pick sixes to essentially win you this game. And so I think Anthony Richardson has probably played his best game of his career maybe second best game of his career this past week, where they put it on his shoulders at the end of the game, and he throws a touchdown pass, and then they go for 2 with 12 seconds to go, and he played well. Like, this Colts team is not bad. And I think Shane Steichen's an outstanding coach. I don't think they're a bad football team at all. They're learning a lot with a young quarterback, just like the Broncos. So the Chargers game's going to be tough. I think the Chargers are a very good football team.
I do too.
Cincinnati, like, again, that's an MVP type quarterback. Do you have 2 corners that can handle T. Higgins and Jamar Chase? Like,
I don't know.
I don't know. So they could lose 2. I mean, they could lose 2 and still be in the postseason. Not like
they're great.
I think it might be an overreaction to just right after the way this Browns game went. Say you're going to beat Indy, Chargers, Bengals, Chiefs, and then obviously it's harder if the Chiefs do play people. Okay, I'll speed up with my answers. I'm sorry.
The Baltimore Ravens, who've had a little bit of a tough stretch in the last month or so. Justin Tucker, man, he is having a brutal year. I saw a stat that the Ravens have lost all 5 of their games by a combined 22 points. Justin Tucker, after missing 3 field goals in his most recent outing, now has 10 missed kicks on the season, which totaled to 22 points. Justin Tucker is under contract through 2027, but I think there's a legitimate argument that the Ravens should potentially move on from the greatest kicker, arguably, of all time after this season.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say like within the next couple of weeks, because then I would say that's an overreaction.
No, I think when you're this year's kind of baked in, you're doing what you're doing. But I actually think, and it's crazy because he may go down, and he's heralded by some as the greatest kicker of all time.
He is.
I agree. But I think even though you've got him under contract for a few more seasons, I think that he has shown enough of a decline. And we saw it here with Brandon McManus, who was a hero during the 2015 run, never missed a kick and was nails from long distance. It just, once it fell off. And it feels like we're watching that happen with Justin Tucker in real time.
Yeah, I had a coach text me, Richie, that was just like, it's kind of sad.
You can see it in Harbaugh's face every time it happens. He's like...
It is, because like we said, this is the greatest kicker in the history of this league. Like, a guy that you literally used to just go, like, if he ran on the field, you're like...
Automatic.
3 points are happening.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just, he missed 3 kicks in the game against Philly. He's had seasons where he hasn't missed 3 kicks.
And he wasn't just automatic from long range. You weren't even scared as a Ravens fan if Justin Tucker trotted out on the field and there was a 6 in front of the distance that he had to kick.
You're like, there's a very good chance he makes this kick.
Yeah.
And I would say this, because I host my 89 show with Steve Smith, and Steve played for John Harbaugh, right? And so we actually talked about this a lot on the episode that we taped this morning. And Steve has great insight on Harbaugh and knows him so well. Mm-hmm. He had a great point where he was like, I don't know if anybody can handle the mental aspect of their players better than John. Mm-hmm. Like, this is also he's the only former special teams coordinator that's a head coach in the NFL. So this was his specialty. I think he's handling Justin, in Steve's mind, he's handling Justin properly. Steve has texted him. Other guys like Sizzle and stuff have apparently reached out to Justin Tucker and talked to him. and kind of just not really talk to him, but like tell him, you're still the GOAT. Like, don't forget that. Like, you know what I mean? But when it does come down to this is a team with Super Bowl aspirations that has always been Richie, like unmatched in their ability to win in the nuances of the game, in the game management aspects of things, in crucial situations. These are the things that John Harbaugh's a wizard at, right?
Yeah.
Clock management, all of these different little intricacies that help you win games. And special teams is always a big part of that. But Steve and I made a great point on the show, was like, but if you cost your team points and you cost your team wins, nobody is safe.
Yep.
No position is safe. And even if you're the greatest of all time. So with the expectations of this season and the aspirations that they have, if Justin Tucker is the reason that they fall short, this is not an overreaction, and I think they could move on. In season is just something that can't happen. Like it's just too nuts, I think, to happen.
Yeah.
But after the season, I think it's completely a much easier situation to put yourself through. But also Harbaugh's going to have to massage, like, who do I bring in that's mentally strong enough to go into that locker and replace the greatest of all time?
It's not an easy thing to do, and I'll definitely have my eyes on how they take.
It's fascinating. It's sad. Like we all don't want to see the decline of the greatest players to do what they do, right? And his is just magnified because the margin for error is this big. Like you miss the ball by like that much. Like it's not like you have missed a step and you didn't get the tackle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you've lost a step as a defensive player or something. It's just this is so glaringly obvious that it's sad. It's
in pivotal moments. Kickers have to do that. Everyone's in the stands is holding their breath. They're standing back, and then they're watching it all happen. So I got two more for you here.
Okay.
The AFC Championship game is going to be played on.
Time. I'm sorry. This is a camera issue.
That's okay.
That's okay.
You look great. You look great.
Okay. Go ahead.
The AFC Championship game is going to be on January 28th, if I'm not mistaken. And on that evening, when the two AFC teams are ready to take the field to decide who goes to the Super Bowl, Russell frickin' Wilson is going to run out of one of those tunnels. And let me give some context here, because that does sound kind of crazy. I have been fading this Pittsburgh team mentally and passionately for most of the season, because I just didn't believe in Russell Wilson with what I saw with my own eyes here. I just didn't believe it. I thought the wheels were going to come off. I was stunned that they benched Justin Fields after a 4-2 start, even though he had some clear limitations, within that offense. And Mike Tomlin and that crew has just figured it out. Russell doesn't look anything close to what he looked like in Denver. He's being asked only to do the things that he's still good at this stage in his career, and it's working. They're figuring out ways around it. They've got a good supplementary cast, and they can play defense. And I think this is my Overreaction Tuesday way of admitting I'm throwing my hands up, and I'm not going to question it anymore. I think that they are going to have a favorable draw and not have to play Kansas City to get there. And we'll see what happens with Buffalo and Houston and LA and all that. But that's my overreaction, is that Russell Wilson is going to run out of the tunnel during the AFC Championship game by hook or by crook.
This is a tough one. Because I honestly have a very strong feeling that I don't think the Chiefs are running out of that tunnel either. I really don't. You can't play this way.
They've never looked this mortal with Patrick Mahomes.
No. I mean, Pat's still the best closer in football.
Yep.
Andy's a Hall of Fame coach. Guys can't get open. And you can't win every game from it's luck by now. Like, I know they're putting themselves in position to win a lot of these games.
You have to put yourself in a position to be lucky, to take advantage of that.
So that's them taking advantage of it for sure and putting them in these situations. But Isaiah Likely's toe, or
the blocked kick.
The block kick is execution.
Honestly. The illegal formation penalty, the fumbled snap and crunch.
It's unbelievable. It really is. And I don't know if that's sustainable. I think the Bills are outstanding.
They're sick.
I think the Ravens, when it all clicks, are offensively unstoppable when it all clicks. But there's not that many other challengers. I don't think Houston's dangerous. I don't think the Chargers are there yet.
Not yet.
But could they? I don't know. That'd be wild. But that defense is really good.
It's really good.
And Herbert is playing at like almost a borderline like all pro level for the second half of the year right now. So I'm gonna say no, he will not be. And this is the short reason why. In the postseason, defensive coordinators are on another level.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you cannot have glaring weaknesses. Like you can't have I won't throw it to the middle of the field.
Yeah.
I think Russ is playing great. I thought last week he played great. I said this to somebody the other day, Richie, I'd like your opinion. Like, Broncos fans and Sean Payton better be very happy the way Bo Nix is playing. Because this could look real ugly right now.
Yeah. You had to nail it.
Real ugly right now. And it doesn't because of the way the Broncos are winning games and Bo Nix is playing. But he's playing outstanding. And I give Russ this credit. He has bought into what they want him to do 100%. Like, he is doing everything that they want. He's putting his body on the line. He
looks happier, too.
Yeah, he's making some throws where he's getting just drilled. Like, he's playing really, really well. But I just feel like in the postseason, defense coordinators take it up a notch. And slow him down.
My prediction is fully acknowledging and just choosing to ignore the fact that we see this arc from the Steelers a lot. They play well in the regular season. They make it into the wild card by hook or by crook, and then they run out of gas or they come up against a buzzsaw, defensively or what have you. And some of those get exposed. All right, last one. And I kind of threw this one in there because I think I felt obligated to throw this one in there because I was so within my own viewing observations down on these two particular individuals. And I think that they are turning my head the same way they're turning a lot of heads lately. And that is Bryce Young and Drake May. In my initial one that I had prepped for you, this was going to be an either or situation, but I think I'm just going to double down with the last one here and say both Bryce Young and Drake May are going to quarterback teams with winning records next season after being two of the worst teams in football this season. For two different reasons. Bryce Young, I think he's in a bad division. Bryce Young, I think he's in a winnable division that has been won by a team with a losing record and is kind of in flux with some of those teams. And Drake May, I actually just think Drake May's kind of balling quietly. I think he was...
Their roster stinks.
It does.
Winning record?
I'm not going to say win the division because that's definitely not going to be the case in Drake May's case. But I've been impressed.
I'm just thinking I'm just looking at both divisions. Like, we know the division, the Jets are dog. I almost cursed. The Jets stink. But the Dolphins are going to be fine. The Bills are fine. Beyond fine.
Yeah, the Bills are better than fine.
And for Bryce, I don't see Atlanta just falling completely off. There's too much talent, but I don't see them running away with anything unless Michael Penix just becomes a god. Because I think that change may happen a year sooner than they think.
Right.
And Baker just kind of winning records is tough. Winning records is tough. I think competitive football is a great goal for next season for both of these guys.
It's not spicy enough for an overreaction Tuesday. We're either all in or we're all out.
I don't think they get. I think it's an overreaction. I don't think they get winning records.
Do you think one of them does? If I had kept it as my original thing, is either Bryce Young,
I don't think either one does,
or Drake May. Okay, so it's an overreaction
because there's a lot of because there's a lot of different things that can happen. I mean, look at C.J. Stroud in year 2,
sophomore slump.
And I love what Bryce Young's doing. He's played really good football over the last couple of weeks.
Better than I would have ever expected.
I think the league universally, I think football fans universally are like, cool. Awesome. Because, I mean, he's handled it great. He's a great kid. I've met him a bunch of times. He's handled everything well, and he was thrown through one of the worst, if not the very worst rookie situation we've ever seen a player go through. Yep. I mean, I covered some games down there. It was a dumpster fire. It was unbelievable. And so I'm glad he's playing well, but they're not very good either. No. But Dave Canales has shown us something, I think, as a head coach for sure, which there were some questions. And I just don't think the Patriots flip their roster fast enough, even if Drake May plays better. So, no, I'm going to say it's an overreaction. Neither one has a winning record.
Okay, well, I got a couple of overreactions out of this one, which means I threaded the needle a little bit better. All right, well, next year, a year from now, I'm gonna pin this question with Bryce Young and Drake May in a year from now when they are playing more competitive football. I'm going to forecast it for 2026 eventually. We'll just keep that rolling until either I'm right or they just totally blow me out of the water. So, James, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. Love getting to catch up with you each and every week.
45 minutes we did today, Richie.
We did. You're still
listening. Bravo.
Tuesdays are my hardest days to keep it under the old time cap. But I don't care. It's my show. I can do whatever I want, you know?
Bingo. I love that.
Awesome. Well, James, we will catch up with you next week. Thank you all for joining us. Be sure to give us a follow on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all of our socials at DenverSports.com, and we will see you tomorrow.
Beautiful. See you, Richie.